Strange camera. I don't know why this camera is doing this. Weird. Weird. Well, that looks better. That was weird. Anyway, this idea of AI technology and people who were born in the late 1960s still have to figure things out from day to day, all the time actually. Welcome to Mark Bayezki Crystals channel. So I just uploaded some really beautiful Swiss blue topaz, and it's always been a little bit of an issue with topaz, whether it's mystical topaz, whether it's London blue topaz, which, and funnily enough, I'm working on a few pieces right now. People are asking me, you know, what is topaz? Because I read that it's fired, and it is fired, just like citrine is fired. There's quite a lot of crystals that get fired, but topaz is topaz. So depending on how you fire it and what colour it ends up as, it's still topaz. Does it change the energy of the crystal? I don't believe it does. Mystical topaz is phenomenal energy. I've worked with it for 20 years. Topaz in its natural form is normally, and hey, I'm no expert. I love crystals, but I am no expert. There's people who are far more understanding of crystals than me. I'm more into the energy of crystals. But I've worked with milky blue topaz, and I've worked with natural topaz, which is slightly tingy blue, but very, very, very slightly. That's what I've come across. So I've got natural topaz on my website, and I've got fired topaz, and the energy is phenomenal. It really is gorgeous to work with. It's gorgeous to look at. It's gorgeous to place on the third eye and just lay down and meditate for 15 minutes. Fabulous. It's gorgeous to wear around your neck, round about where your heart is. Some people like to lift it further up. They get a lot of, my customers had a lot of benefit from illnesses of what they believed was illness, but to me it was just a heavy energy that stuck in the throat. Some couldn't sing. Some couldn't talk properly. Some had major issues here, glands, and wearing and working with topaz, especially they're all the same, but when I used to work with London blue or Swiss blue, I used to just gently lay it on the throat and just give the healing session, use that as an extra energy, and I used to place my hand over the crystal, not on it, over it, and I could feel the energy of the crystal working together with the energy that was universally channeled, which is what healing is. And you can feel the healing taking place. Now, what is that healing? To me, I always found that it was a heavy energy that was stuck. That's all it was. And once that's gone, then you start to see a change in the physical. The physical becomes unblocked. You could call it mucus. You could call it, swelling. You could call it raw. If you're a doctor, you would look down the throat and see the physical issue. But the physical issue has to start from somewhere. That is only an after energy, an after issue, because whatever caused it. And normally what causes it is negative energy, fear, worry. So the physical life you have, the emotional life you have, if you hold on to that, then it sits somewhere in the body as a negative, dark, low frequency, and then starts to cause chaos in that particular place. So let's say you were a singer. I had lots of singers come to me, opera singers, and they lost their voice. They couldn't sing anymore, and that was a tragedy. And normally why that was, when you get to the root cause of it, is because of the parents, because of their fear of their parents, what they said to them, or what they said to them. They held on to that, and it went into the throat. It has a lot to do with self-worth. If you suffer with a lack of worth, that energy is created and stays in the body somewhere. And the way I always see it with healing and energy is quite really simple. Any part of your body that retains that fear energy, that worry energy, that negative energy, it becomes a cesspit in that particular place. And what then starts to happen is it vibrates at a frequency that actually illness enjoys. And illness can work together with entity, with trapped spirit. It works because the more darkness you hold inside you, the more you become freely available as an open door to negative entity, attachments, and sometimes even demonic. So, when you look back in history, you see the ancients talking about clearing bad spirits from within people. They used to believe that sickness was evil spirits inside us, and it's true. There is truth in it. There's truth in that. There really is. We've come to the point now where I think nearly every single person on planet Earth has is it a symbiotic or a what's the word? We all have become hosts, not only to dark energies, which includes fear, worry, anger, jealousy, bitterness, but we also hold on to trauma of others. We also have this, all of us have this hijack in this world. We're all hijacked to what we're now starting to understand is parasites. So coupled with parasites who love negative energy, and they're looking for the worst place to be in the body, and that's normally because of how you're feeling. So I believe that more people who suffer with a monkey mind, fear, worry, and they stem from their own fears, they normally have a lot of parasites in their mind, and that's why they go lunatic, because the parasites give off the eggs, and at full moon they go a little crazy. Some people suffer it within the stomach. The stomach is normally related to shock. It's related to a knock. It's related to terrible moments in one life where it sits in the stomach. The back is normally related to other people's backstabbing, other people's nastiness, anger that we absorb, in the sense of we create and absorb it. So we hear something, we thought that we had a good relationship with somebody, and then the day later somebody said, do you know that John talks so bad about you? Boom, it sits in your back. It affects the liver, which is near the front, but it also affects the spine and the kidneys. And a lot of people who struggle who have really bad back issues is because they've suffered with a lot of people who have been really awful to them in their life. Shock energy of being, of thinking that you knew somebody and that you thought they were your friend and you loved them, and all the while they've been saying horrible things about you and they didn't like you at all. They were in fact jealous of you and you never saw it. So that can sit on the back. Strangers have the same effect. A stranger can, say awful things, and depending on how you are and how you perceive that stranger, if you see that stranger as more powerful than you because of their frequency and vibration that comes out of their mouth, then you create that very pain from the brain, which runs down and again sits in a certain place, like your back. When that energy stays there, what happens is it becomes a cesspit, and that's why parasites are there, and that's why cancer is normally there, and that's why cancer and parasites are normally in those places. So my mum died of stomach cancer. My mum, I believe wholeheartedly, had tons of parasites. A cancer blew up in her stomach. Why? Because she was living with an abusive man. So all the emotion in the second brain, the emotional brain stomach, was having to deal with an abusive man every day up until she was 45, and prior to that when she met him in her teens. So eventually it can happen. Not to everybody, but it can happen. And we're seeing it more and more now, because what we're realizing in this world, we're realizing that the darkness, entity, attachments, demonic and monsters that live in these bodysuits at the highest levels that are trying to cause the world of culling, realize that if they can make the body in a place of unbalance, if they can feed the body poisons, if they can spray down poisons, if they can make you drink poisons, then your body is going to vibrate at a crazy frequency, which is very similar to, like I said, negative energy. So you're more likely then to be an open door for every bad, negative, heavy thing to come in, the parasites to enjoy themselves, the attachments to fester in that energy, which then causes the physical body to break down, and thus you get cancer, you get dis-ease. Pretty simple, really. So the message tonight is look after your body. Work on stop getting upset over anything. Work on not letting other people make you feel bad. Why? Because if you feel bad because of somebody saying something, what's ultimately going to happen to you is you're going to kill yourself. You're going to make yourself sick. So are you going to make yourself sick because of an absolute tool, a dipstick, a plonker? No, you're not. They're nobodies, because they call everybody the same thing. You think that one person's just having a go at you. If it isn't you, it's somebody else, it's somebody else, it's somebody else. So it's never anything personal. Okay? So you have to learn not to let things upset you. That you wouldn't be human if you didn't feel the suffering and the pain. You wouldn't be human in the spiritual sense if you didn't try and understand why. But like the Buddha says, who's on my arm, pain is inevitable. That is, you're not weak when you feel pain. You're just sensitive, you're emotional, which is all good because that's connecting you to the spirit world. But you have to learn that those gifts of empathy, those gifts of attunement, those gifts of senses, of sensitivities, are there for you to figure out that whatever somebody else is saying to you, and it's nasty, is not your issue. Unless, of course, you hit them over the head with a hammer. Unless you're a bitch and starts calling somebody, then you get what you deserve. But if you haven't said anything to them and all you've done is behaved in the way that you feel is who you are, and they've been offended by that, or they're angry because of what you're saying, that's not your issue. And they certainly aren't worth listening to. I remember there was one time where a dear friend said to me, "Are you okay today, Mark?" I said, I'm getting so much grief because of this path, and the more I become successful, the more I'm hated by these people. And I said, and she said to me, "So what are you doing about that?" I said, "I don't know what to do." And she said, "It sounds like you're listening to the wrong people." That's all she said. And that was enough for me to go, penny drop moment. I'm listening to the wrong people. And then I realized that the people that I want to be surrounded with in my life are people that I love for who they are, no matter what they do and say. As long as they're kind and they don't hurt anybody, I love them for who they are, flaws and all. But I also love that they love me back for who I am. So I can love them and they can love me, just the quirkiness and the way we are. And that's what I've done over these 20 years. Try to surround myself with people who love me for who I am and let me simply be. Just like anybody who's in my life, I let them simply be. They can eat what they want, they can drink what they want, they can do all the wrong things. Doesn't matter. Live and let live. It's their experience. I don't force, I don't push. Sometimes I'll say, "This is my opinion" when asked, but I won't be nasty. I won't turn around and say to a friend of mine's friend, "Oh, do you know what that person's like?" I would never. That's just not who I am. I can't stand bitchiness. I can't stand opinionated people who are having a go at somebody else for a certain reason that doesn't fit in their box, or it doesn't, work in their program. Live and let live. Now, there is a point where you say, well, if somebody, let's say, you're worried about somebody, then that's a different energy. You come across and, you know there's something doesn't feel right. Can you feel that worry, that sensitivity? So you share it in the way you can. As a healer, as a reader, I used to share it in a way that didn't ever touch the person directly. I would always use a metaphor or a story or somebody else. So when I used to read for people, I used to say, I knew a woman that was pregnant and she had about 20 cigarettes a day. And the closer she got to having the baby came out premature. And the baby fought for its life in an incubator for many weeks. After that, the baby struggled and the baby wasn't well. And till this day, the baby's alive, but the baby is now about 3, and they have to go to the hospital probably once a month. Now, this is a true story. And that's all I would say. I knew that the client smoked, not because of the smell, but because I was shown as I was reading. And that client would walk away and hear that story, sit down, think about it, and as Veronica, as she was called then, as I remember her to this day, stop smoking at that particular moment like that. Why? Because she heard the story of somebody else, she related it to her smoking, and that story was enough to make her understand. Now, I didn't say, you've got to stop smoking because you're going to kill your baby. I didn't say that. I said it in a way that the human consciousness can actually come up with their own solution, their own understanding, and then make the decision, not because of me, but because of them. Are you going to stop smoking? Yes. Okay, so why are you stopping smoking? Because you told me to. Okay, doesn't work. So I tell the story, she goes away. I see her again in 3 months. And I said, how's things? Oh yeah, I'm feeling great. In fact, I'm so glad I stopped smoking. I said, oh wow, how long you stopped smoking? Probably about an hour after I came for a reading. I went, oh wow, okay, and how do you feel? I've never felt better. I feel amazing. I wish I'd have done it sooner. She made the decision. There was no trying to force her. There was no trying to tell her what she was doing wrong. I just shared a story. And that's how my psychic readings always were. Never looking at my client saying, you're doing this wrong. You shouldn't be with him. You shouldn't be with her. You should give up your job. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. None of that. That's just ego driven. And I realize that that doesn't work. And it's bullshit. And all you're doing it for is for your own ego because you think you're important and brilliant. So that little bit, that what I just shared with you is brilliant. And it's very much like people who sometimes are not awake because they're too busy in fear and worry of bills and worry about everything, their family and whatever. So what I used to do is get the radio and put it on. Whenever I was at the house of somebody's and I was doing my psychic work, I would always put this radio on. And it would be a radio called the Richie Allen Radio Show. And I would play the radio while I was cooking, as I was maybe doing some psychic work in that house. And people used to walk in and out of the kitchen. Never did I put it loud. Never did I force it upon anybody. But I just sit the radio there. And for 7 days or 2 weeks of me being in this psychic workshop or retreat, whatever I was doing, there would be a point that 1 or 2 or 3 people would say, what is this? And I'll say, what's what? They say, who's this woman talking? I said, oh, this is called the Richie Allen Radio Show. Who's the woman? I'm not so sure who it is, but he normally gets people to talk about real life situations. So it's basically people like you and me who don't really get to speak our truth, but Richie allows them on his show. And boom, that's it. Why? Because they made the conscious decision. Got some big B's here. They made the conscious decision, that penny drop moment, to listen for the first time. I didn't tell them to listen. They decided to listen. And it's that beautiful expression, that beautiful moment that you know that when it's their moment, they will hear. And if it's not their moment, they won't hear. But I find that forcing somebody, sit down everybody and listen to this, doesn't work. Sometimes it might work, but I think the best way to open people up is not non-force. And that's my humble opinion. There are people in this world who are so tied up in the pain and suffering, the sadness, that they forget who they are. And sometimes there are lights in this world, like you, that shine that light in a non-evasive way, a loving way. And for all our faults, because sometimes we might say something that we knew we shouldn't have said, these things happen because, we're so overwhelmed by certain moments that we do. I mean, look at me when COVID came. I was like overwhelmed and I was, just telling everybody, like I was screaming for the rooftops. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. But sometimes we get overwhelmed and we want to help as many people as we can. But when it comes to readings, I always tried to allow them to understand it themselves. So I'll give you another example. There was a really young man. He was, I would say, no more than 14. And his mum was absolutely, totally finished with him. She couldn't cope. She was sick. She didn't know what to do with him. The guy basically smoked marijuana day and night. Didn't have a job, didn't want a job, didn't want to do anything. And she managed to get him to come to me. And as he sat there, I put my hands over his hands and I started feeling his energy. And in the pit of my stomach, I could feel this sensation, this sickness in my stomach. And I was trying to find out what the sickness was. Was it him, or was this sickness just a message saying that there's something extremely wrong? And there was. And what it was I saw a walnut. I've seen this loads of times on people who smoke marijuana and ayahuasca. So I saw this, sorry guys, I saw this walnut as I closed my eyes, and the walnut is like that, and basically it cracks. And I always try to understand, what did that mean? What was the significance? Because I saw in images. And I realized the walnut was a representation of the brain. And there was a point that his brain was going to crack open, not physically, but spiritually. And I saw the number 10. And I remember taking my hands away, and I said to him, there was a beautiful young man who was 14 years old, who was here about a year ago. And I feel the same energy as I feel to you. And I want to explain what happened. This lovely young man struggled to find his path, and he struggled with life, and he didn't want to live in this world because he couldn't find his path. So rather than trying to find his path, he chose to deny it. And when he denied it, it was the only way he could deny it was with alcohol, and he used to smoke. And this man, this young man, never wanted to find his path. And he came to me twice, and on the third time he came, I could feel that something was going to happen. And I said, please think about your health, because I don't want to see you lying down in a hospital bed for 6 months. And he didn't listen, and he continued doing what he did, and something happened in his brain, and it was so bad that the ambulance came, took him to the hospital, and he went into a coma. It was awful. And he was basically in a coma for months. And in that time, awful. When he came through, he wasn't the person he was anymore. He couldn't do anything. He couldn't get up. He couldn't feed himself. And it was the most tragic story of somebody who created his own destiny to be in the way he was. And I said, when I placed my hands over yours, I saw this man. I saw this boy. I saw this young man in the hospital bed. I left it at that. I didn't tell him to do anything. I just shared the story. About a month later, his mother said, he's got a job, he stopped smoking, he doesn't drink anymore, he doesn't do recreational drugs. He is now working as a painter and decorator in a place called Alarin de la Torre. And he's earning money, and he's doing really well, and he's finally got a girlfriend, and it's like he's a new person. And he saw, now if I ask him, she said, he sees what he was like before, and he knows what he's like now, and he's joyful, and he's happy, to have snapped out of that energy. I have loads of stories like that. Not like young boys, but girls as well. A lot of girls who have anorexia used to come to me. So they have to find the only person who can help them is themselves. That's why it's a cliche when people say it, but it's true. The only person who can help you is yourself. Anyway, it's food for thought. Talked enough now. I am wishing you a lovely evening wherever you are, and from the beautiful, we don't like these big wasps, I tell you. I don't know what kind of wasp they are. They're massive. They're huge, like horses. They keep coming back. They're massive. But we need them. They're part of this earth. They belong here just as much as us. So all quiet here, all quiet, nice and quiet, nice and peaceful. So I think I've got another 2 more days and then I'm back on YouTube, Mark Bajerski. And it's true, people in general, to be honest, are lazy. We're all lazy, to be honest. Most of us are lazy. We don't really kind of bother so much. And that's why there's only 27 people on here, because those that some people just can't be asked. They can't be bothered to actually find me on here on the Crystal channel. So there might be only 100, 200 at the end of this week, and then I'll go back onto Matt Bajerski YouTube channel, and they'll say, "Oh, we've missed you. Where have you been?" Some of them are genuinely mean that. Where have you been? But they like convenience. People like convenience. They don't like to scroll to find somebody. They don't like to take time and effort, so that their love for what your work is only limited to how they feel. And that's why there's, I think a good idea is that I think I might be creating something very soon. And it's going to be, it's a school. It's part of a school. I can't remember what school it is, but it's basically like YouTube, but you have members, and those members are basically, it can grow or it doesn't grow, depending if people want to listen to your work and hear what you've got to say. And I've been onto this site and it's massive. Some people have like 300,000 followers. Some people don't charge anything. Some people have a small fee. Some people charge $49, and they might have a month. This is a month, and you know what I mean. That, like, these people who talk about Bitcoin or stuff like that. It's like learning how to understand the market of money and stuff like that, and people talking about AI and showing them how to use it. So they've got people who follow them there, and they pay a set fee, or they don't pay nothing, and they go there and they go to listen. I'm being bit by ants like crazy. That's why I'm scratching like mad. So the reason why is because it's very much like a platform where you don't get censored. And I'm trying to find a platform where I don't get censored, it's easy to work with, and I'm able to utilize that platform to embed into markbajerski.com. That's kind of like what I'm working at now, and we're going to see where that gets us. But that's it really, that's where I am. And then I guess when I start, I'm going to start from the very beginning, and I'm going to start teaching everything that I've learned, and we're going to go into deep details. We're going to scratch the surface, and then we're going to go right deep into healing, energy, things that I've not talked about yet, which is something that I can't talk about because I can't keep getting into trouble on here. I have to be careful what I say. You've seen me hesitate most of the time. I don't know how long that will go. I don't know how long that will take to go away, that hesitation, when we're even on a platform like the school platform. So we'll see. But it would be nice to be able to just sit. In fact, when I'm actually talking to people in general, I've got this button that I'm hesitant, because I even think when I'm talking to somebody outside that I have to be careful. That's how darkness is now weaving into everybody. And we've got that little fail-safe switch saying be careful, or else something's gonna happen. I think that's happening to everybody, really, to a degree. And that's how darkness works. It works through fear. And that hesitance is fear of and I actually talk. I don't normally have a filter, but as of late, especially having 2 strikes, I can't say anything on that channel now for 90 days. That means I won't be able to talk about things that should be fluid on Mark Bajerski YouTube channel. It means that I have to wait 90 days before those strikes are taken down. Was that October? No, it's like October, November. Ridiculous. But that's the way it is. So I either put up with that or I find an alternative place. So we'll see where we go with that. I am wishing you a lovely day wherever you are. Take care of yourself from the farm, from Mango Farm. The mangoes are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So in 2 months they'll be ready to eat. Yeah. I guess that's it, really. I don't think I've said this, but some people might even just want to buy some mangoes just to taste them. Real mangoes which are loved, and we have no chemicals here, none at all. Everything here is done with love and free from chemicals. And these beautiful 18-year-old mango trees are absolutely delicious. And what I might do, if people ask, I might say, look, I can't do it like my website, but what I can say is if you want some mangoes, I can charge you for the mangoes at a certain price per kilo, but you're going to have to pay for delivery yourself, which is going to be obviously a lot more money. But you might want to taste genuine, free from poisons mangoes. Did you know that people believe mangoes are not of this world? Do you know some people believe that they're a higher frequency? Did you know that they're like, people talk about, I don't know, like 3, 5D, whatever. I have no idea what any of that means, but they believe that mangoes are of a different energy frequency. And you know what? They might be absolutely right. There's something very unique about mango. So, yeah, we'll see what happens near the time they become ripe. So, I am wishing you a lovely day. I hope this conversation sees you well, and it might help along your beautiful journey of life. Take care, bless you all, and see you in a few days on Mark Bajerski channel, where I won't be able to say anything other than talking about crystals, and that's it really, oils, incense. But I'll see you there, if not tomorrow. Bye for now. Take care.